Would you be willing to take a phone call?
Sure.
All right. You're on with Ranger Jackson. I think I know who this is. Is this the Jim Cook, the cop from the 60s, from the Stakeout Squad?
You got it, Mike. How you doing, brother?
How are you, Jim? What do you think about Ranger Jackson? Is this guy some sort of law enforcement?
I'm listening to this guy. I feel like I'm back in the 40s laying on a floor with my brothers listening to the Lone Ranger show. Remember the Lone Ranger with Tonto?
Absolutely,
yeah.
Sure.
All right, it's unbelievable. I really enjoyed it listening to him. He's very, very good. Joaquin, you're God bless you, man. I'm glad you made it and you're still walking around.
Well, thank you, Jim.
I got a question to ask you. Now you rode horses, right? And I guess most of the time you were on a horse.
Not most of the time I was in the vehicle, but I spent a lot of time on horseback on manhunts and also down on the river, and also getting livestock thefts and things like that.
Okay, what type of horses did you use out there? And did you have your own specific, your own horse most of the time?
Yeah, I've owned 2 horses, Jim, but I found out later on that it was a whole lot less expensive to just in my area. If I need a horse, just in the area I need it in, just call the rancher and he'd send somebody with a trailer and a horse to me, and so that was it. I didn't have a vet bill and a feed bill that way, but the 2 horses I owned, I had a high yeller horse one time. He was a cross. He was a quarter horse in Palomino. We call Palominos high yellers.
Yeah.
And but my favorite horses were lineback dun horses, and I owned one lineback dun, and was a hell of a horse. And but anyway, the rest of the time I just in an area. Well, if I was working a cattle theft on a particular ranch, well, what we'd have to do is we'd have to go. First thing you do on a cattle theft is find out if the cattle have been stolen or stray, and to find out if they're stray, you got to check the fences, and so in early years, well, we'd have to ride those fences, looking at down water gaps and down fence or somewhere where cattle could have gotten out and straight over to the neighbors, and then later we got helicopters, and you could do with a helicopter in a couple of hours what it would take you a couple of days to do a horseback,
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, we rode Morgans in Manhattan. They're not as fast, but they're big and strong, and they're very good for crowd control.
Yeah, I've seen some of your mounted officers there in New York, and they're riding some good horses, and they can set a horse, so they know what they're, and is that an English type saddle they're riding?
Pardon?
The saddle they ride, it doesn't have a horn on it, does it? It's an English saddle?
No, we didn't have a horn. No, we have it's like a modified English saddle.
Uh-huh.
And it's got a slit in the middle of it.
Yes.
And it's pretty small saddle. You really don't have too much to hang on to if you're not a good cowboy, I'll tell you. The first time I was near a horse in my life, I was like 28 years old. And within a month's time, with the school we went through, we were riding through the streets of Manhattan. And it was a little scary at first, I'll tell you.
When were you a mounted cop, Jim? When were you a mounted cop for the NYPD?
68, 69. And then I went into stakeout after that. I rode 2 years in mounted, and then I went to stakeout.
Jim, let me ask you something. On the horseshoes on those horses, but to being on that asphalt and concrete and brick and whatever, you got a lot of brick, I guess, in all the streets there in New York. But what kind of horseshoes were they? They were cork shoes. Any special type shoe they put on? I know there had to be a special type shoe.
Well, the only one thing I know, they wore metal shoes, and they changed them every couple of weeks. They didn't have them on too long because they did wear. The park horses, the ones that rode in the park most of the time on dirt, their shoes would last a little bit longer. But the ones on the when you're out in the concrete and on a blacktop, they didn't last that long. So every couple of weeks they were getting new shoes all the time.
Jim, you should check out Joaquin Jackson's book, One Ranger. It's on his website, oneranger.org. And I think Joaquin said that some of them he might autograph if we set up something with the Mike Damone radio shows, correct, Joaquin? I mean, would you be willing to autograph them if the guys were to order them?
Sure. If way I'm set up on that website, they can use a credit card, and they can order the book and put their names in there, and I'll personalize them and ship the book to them.
All right, I'm looking to get one of them myself.
I tell you, I'm absolutely in awe because, as I said, Joaquin, I mean, I spoke to Jim several times, and we both worked the same type of neighborhoods. I was on the job from the 80s to 2004, and Jim was on the job from 1963 to 1980. And you yourself were in the Texas Rangers from 66, but a highway patrolman 9 years before that. So when I use the term old-timer, me being a New Yorker, that's an extremely affectionate term because there are many people, in my opinion, that work for police departments, but not many people are law enforcement officers. And I really think that is a problem in today's day and age with all the political correctness that's going on, all the affirmative action nonsense. As a matter of fact, I'm a licensed private investigator in New York State and in the state of Florida, and I just recently heard that there's a female lesbian detective that's suing the New York City Police Department because one of her bosses called her a waste of time, a complete waste of a cop, which it's just really, in my opinion, is getting out of hand. When I listen to your stories, Joaquin, and I've listened to the stories that Jim Cook has told over the years, I yearn for the days of old. As Jim stated, how he used to lay on the floor in his living room and listen to the radio. I mean, those were in my opinion, those are the good old days that I wish were today's day and age. How do you feel about what's going on with today's society regarding political correctness? And do you see it, Joaquin, affecting the Texas Rangers today?
Well, I don't see it affecting the Rangers as much as probably sheriff's departments and police departments, but it definitely does affect the Rangers to a lot more extent than it did before. I know in the last 4 or 5 years I worked, this political correctness started coming into effect, and I'm telling you that it's not good. And you're talking about cops that. If a cop hires out to be a cop, if you're going to work, ride for the brand. In other words, you be loyal. And if you don't like your job, then quit it and go find something else.
Yeah, bullseye.
But political correctness is a bad thing, and I'm amazed that the officers today are doing as great a job as they're doing. Sometimes with their hands tied, with all the cameras, that every cell phone's got a damn camera on it, plus all the units that got cameras, and officers are doing it. I'm really proud of our law enforcement officers today, and like I told you earlier today, very proud of you, NYPD, on handling the way they handled that bomber thing. I mean, they latched on to him before he even got out of the United States, and that's damn good police work, I'm telling you.
Thank you very much, Joaquin. I truly appreciate that. If anybody else would like to call in and speak to Joaquin, you could call in at 347-945-5285. That's 347-945-5285. Joaquin, let's fast forward to today. What have you, with only 40 minutes left in the Mike Damone Show, and I appreciate you hanging on as long as you've had. What are you up to today's day and age? I see that you also have a private investigative company, and you have your website and your movies and your books. Do you have time to sleep? What else do you have going on in your life?
No, that's about it. Because wife and I, the books came out in 2005. The first book did, and then the second book come out in 2007. And so we've been on the road traveling ever since 2005. And she retired as a counselor of the middle school in Alpine in 2004. So that worked out good. We got to travel together and meet people and do the book signings and things like that. My private investigation work, I do most of my work is civil work. I do a lot of work for the major tire companies where accidents happen on the interstate and the highways where they have a blowout or tread separation. And of course, these attorneys are like a bunch of feeding sharks. They naturally get a hold of those people, and they sue the tire company, and they